Hello everybody, and welcome to How to Write an Effective Thesis. I wanted to do a short lecture on how to write an effective thesis based on the experiences that I've had with students over the years in composition and writing classes. First, I'll go over 5 suggestions and then give examples of each of those suggestions so you can see each one in practice to see the qualities of an effective thesis. First, use 1 or 2 sentences that sum up the ideas of your argument in a sentence. What I've found through the years with students is that if I can ask them to articulate their ideas into 1 sentence, it helps them to frame their thesis in an effective and concise way. So if you could sum up the ideas in your thesis in a sentence, 1 sentence, maybe 2, how would you express it? How would you word it? Number 2. Your thesis should be focused, narrowed, and significant. It represents your entire paper's purpose. So think about how to make your paper and your argument. Remember that your thesis represents your whole purpose, everything you're saying in your entire argument, in your entire paper. So think about how you can represent your purpose effectively. Focus your argument in a way that states something significant about the topic that can be backed with facts. Narrow the topic enough that focuses on a portion of a broader topic. So you want something that is specific, something that is narrowed from a very broad topic to something maybe within a broader topic, and something that's significant. In other words, something that your reader would want to read about and learn more about, something that goes beyond just stating facts. Facts would back it up, but your thesis needs to state something that's a claim, something that can be backed with facts that's important or significant about the larger topic. Number 3, articulate your thesis as a response to your problem question. What I usually encourage students to do is to frame their topic in the form of a problem-driven question. And then once that problem-driven question is articulated, a thesis statement will be the direct answer to that problem-driven question. So a problem question frames a topic in a thought-provoking, specific, and engaging way. Answering your own question ensures your thesis is direct, clear, and focused. Number 4, consider using your thesis as a thesis map, or a map for your entire essay. So if you have 3 main points in your thesis, let's say, you may have 2, you may have 4, but let's just say you have 3 key points. Those key points back up your thesis. So if you have 3 main points, consider a statement that clarifies your main idea. That's your overarching main idea. And then you have the 3 key points that will support it. Then you might clarify each of those in a nutshell, in brief, concise words, and make that your overall thesis statement. For example, you might state blah, 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 because blank, blank, and blank. So the first part is your main point, and then you might connect it in some way with a transition. It may be because, it may be another word, and then you'll list your 3 reasons in your statement. Number 5. Make sure your thesis takes a stand on something. That may sound obvious, but what that means here is that you don't want to just state a fact or state something obvious in your thesis. State something significant about the topic. For example, saying child abuse is bad, that's what's called a so what thesis. The reader would be like, yeah, and that's obvious. But something about what should be done to eradicate, prevent, or cut down on child abuse, that would be a significant thesis. That's something you can back. So make sure your thesis takes a stand within the issue, and remember that thesis statements make claims that are backed with facts. So here are examples of each of these suggestions put to work. First, use 1 or 2 sentences that sum up the ideas of your argument in a sentence. Here's a thesis statement that's obviously 1 sentence, and it sums up the ideas of someone's paper in a sentence. There should not be more censorship of violence and profanity on network television because it infringes on freedom of speech. Watching adult content is a personal choice, and rating systems can be used by parents to monitor what their young children watch. So that provides a sentence, and in this case, there's a thesis map that clarifies 3 key points. And it should stand out enough, usually somewhere near the end of the intro, in a way that the reader doesn't have to look for it. It should be obvious that it's the thesis. Number 2, your thesis should be focused, narrowed, and significant. Those are the 3 qualities you want for a good thesis sentence. Now, here's an example of one that's too broad, for example. America's healthcare system needs to be reformed to cut costs. Okay, but that's a very broad topic for a 5-page paper. So you want to narrow it to something that's more realistic for a 5-page paper. So you might consider some aspect of healthcare cost in order to focus your paper in a more realistic space for 5 pages. Americans should be allowed to buy prescription drugs from approved Canadian pharmacies as an alternative to rising costs in the United States, or rising drug costs in the United States. That focuses on a specific part of the healthcare system in a way that it can be argued in that space and in that span for the paper. Number 3, articulate your thesis as a response to your problem question. So here's a problem question that I came up with that I've had students write about, and then a potential response that a student might have in response. So this is a problem-driven question, and then the response is the thesis, but it directly answers the question. Do the human benefits of animal experimentation justify the harm to animals? Response: while there have been many human benefits to animal experimentation, new advances in technology that create alternatives to animal testing can create the same benefits and do not justify the harm to the animals. So the question is there, and then the thesis response directly answers and addresses the question, but it also sums up the paper in a sentence. Number 4, consider using your thesis as a map to your essay. Here's an example of a thesis map, and you've already seen 1 or 2 others. More companies should give employees the option to work at home because it saves companies money on office equipment and supplies, increases employee productivity, and increases employee satisfaction and retention. You've got the main idea here. More companies should give employees the option to work at home, and then it lists 3 specific reasons why that would be a good idea. And if companies themselves and managers were the audience here, you would be appealing to them by showing how it can benefit both companies and the employee. Number 5, make sure your thesis takes a stand on something. In other words, you want to avoid a so what thesis that states something obvious or something that's not significant. Child abuse is on the rise in the U.S. That's obviously an alarming statistic, or even though there's not a statistic here, that's something that can be backed with facts. However, it's stating something that might be obvious if you back it with facts. So you would want to dig a little deeper and think about something significant about that. What's the cause of child abuse? Why is this happening? How can we solve this problem? Those are more significant focuses you might use here. And here's one example of how someone took a so what thesis and made it into something that takes a stand on something. In other words, it makes a claim and then facts back it up. Since child abuse is on the rise in the U.S., a national task force needs to be created to research the causes of the increase, establish specific solutions to combat child abuse in families, and monitor the problems and solutions for sustainable changes in prevention. So this provides 3 solutions, and it responds to the issue of increases in child abuse in the U.S., theoretically. So that's how to improve your thesis statements and how to write effective thesis statements, and also what the qualities of an effective thesis statement are. I hope that this has been helpful, and thank you for listening.